know enough about that. So I moved over here in 1950 at the age of 19 or 20, and started off in this town of beautiful people, and outrageous musicians come from all over the world, the best in the world. And I knew I was in deep water right off. I started getting calls for studio work, movies, and a lot of records and things like that. And I don't know, I've been here a couple of years. I won a Downbeat Award and got thrown in with these really first-rate professional people. Film writers, directors, composers, orchestrators. Found myself sitting next to the world's greatest flute player, you know, one of the world's greatest cello players. And I figured, well, I'd always known that I had better get my my learning chops together, because there was a lot going on that I didn't understand. So, but there was a lot that I did understand, because here I was only about 20 years old, and I come from the sticks. I mean, literally from the desert. I mean, you could look as far as the eye could see. You wouldn't see a car or a 7-Eleven or nothing out there. I mean, just blank city. And you know, I found myself in here maybe one out of 3 or 4 or possibly 5 guys in this whole town that could go get called to sit in an orchestra, a symphony orchestra, and read the parts and follow the conductor. And then if they said, we want you to improvise over this chase scene, I could do that. And I could play electric guitar in an orchestra. That was unheard of. So that brought the question of how the heck did I learn all that as quickly as I had when everybody else was almost twice my age. And so I was really fascinated with this business of learning. Started teaching other studio guys. I was asked to originate the course for vocational guitar at the first vocational music school in this country, called Westlake College of Music, over here in Hollywood. I taught there, and I started learning a lot about how does one go about learning fast, because that was the name of the game. And doing the studio thing, which I continued to do, by the way, until just in very recent years, have started to tapered off on that one. I found out that every time I got in the car in the morning, was on my way to work, I never knew what they were going to ask me to do. Never had any idea. But yet I was comfortable with it. And I realized that, well, that's one of the things that they pay me for. That I can walk into something that's really cold. I mean, where I'm cold, and I actually don't have any idea what it is I'm supposed to be doing. And it could very well be something I've never done before, which it was many times. And so the business of surviving in that business got to be a business, the matter of learning, being able to learn real quick. It was nothing to get dropped right into a style and be expected to perform it right quick that I'd never done before. Mariachi music, I'll never forget the first time I ever encountered that stuff. That stuff blew me away. 4s over 3s and 3s over 4s. But I learned it quick, and I noticed that everybody else in the business did too. As your future is only as good as the last gig you played. So it became apparent that learning fast was, wherever I had gotten it, was something I was going to have to continue on doing. And it still is the name of the game. whatever style of music we're dealing with, and I'm speaking at the commercial level now. You understand? I'm talking about the guy that goes out and makes a living doing it. Whatever kind of music we may think is really it today, and it actually may be. One of the hottest thing going right now is blah, blah, blah. And we nail that baby down. Boy, don't make the mistake of thinking, boy, once I have this, I've got it. Because right coming on its tail is the new one, and that one's on its way out. So they say, oh my God, here comes a new one, I got to learn that. And sometimes you really love what it is, you know, you really get off on it. And sometimes you don't. I got off on acid rock, that was, you know, that during the Jimi Hendrix period. I was really one busy guy with all the little electric boxes and with my distortion things, and it was really fun because I was able to make things up, you know. But then I'd have to go right from there to another day where they wanted me to finger pick like some guy from the Bayous or something on an E major chord or something like that, and I didn't like that so much. Not that it was inferior, I just didn't like the sound and didn't like to do it. But by gosh, I had to do it like I believed in it, you know. So the business of learning turns out to be a technique that you're going to be using after you get out of the school. And being in the school for a year is going to give you a great opportunity to polish some of your learning skills. Now, the things I'm going to tell you about today along those lines are not in any order like a speech. Well, first there's this and then comes that. There's no chronology to it. What they are and the other thing is that they're not the latest brand new breakthroughs in learning theory. They're not that either. Some of the things I'll be telling you have been known for ages, hundreds of centuries, the day before yesterday. No, things that have been known a long time, and are pretty much the way it is about learning. Nothing fancy, no electrical stuff or no learning pills or any of that, but stuff that really works, stuff you can really count on to work for you, even when you don't feel much like learning, or even when you don't even like what you're about to learn very much. So I think it might be a good idea, so we can kind of zip through this thing. If you all had some pencils and paper to write on, would be really a good thing to do. If you don't have anything like that, if you have a tape machine, go ahead and turn that on. If you don't have that, borrow a paper and pencil from the person next to you or something like that. No, thanks. Water wouldn't be a bad idea. Thanks. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to toss out things at you about learning, and you can jot them down. Now, we'll start off with the how you jot them down is an important thing. We're taught to write from upper left to right, you know, across the page like that till we get to the bottom. And that's very orderly that way. But as it turns out, people don't think that way. People think in a very disorderly, rampant, non-linear way. We don't think like computers where everything is all in a row, a bunch of ones and zeros in a row. We think omnidirectional, all in the same, in all directions at the same time. And we think extremely fast. They say it's been said recently that they calculate that a thought is maybe formed, Patrick, thank you, buddy.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks. That perhaps a thought forms at the speed of light, or 100 times the speed of light. So this technique that I'm going to show you is called brain mapping. It is a kind of a new thing, at least by that name. It's called brain mapping, and that's where you write down anywhere on the paper, and figure this one piece of paper is going to contain what normally might take up several pages of very orderly left to right type of writing. This one paper is going to end up just crammed with stuff. You might have one little idea end up in the upper right-hand corner, and later on you might decide to draw a circle around it because something else reminds you of that. And then it might connect with something else. You draw an arrow. Some other idea you might make bold right in the middle of the page and underline it or put a box around it. So and just let it fly. Just let it go anywhere it goes on the page. Don't try to put it in any order. And that's called brain mapping. And your note-taking will become, probably 2 to 3 times more effective that way than it would be if you went in a real orderly 1, 2, 3 way. Okay? So put them down real loose. Now let me start off by, instead of just telling you stuff to make a list of, let's let you kick it off with some questions you may have about learning. Speed learning, how to get the speed at which you learn up, and how to get the retention up so that you're able to remember what it was you learned and actually use it. So now you can fire at that area from any angle that you like. And that's part of the learning process also, is to be able to look at whatever it is, say, hey, that chord, Mr. Teacher, is it okay to look at that chord this way instead of that way? You have to be able to change the perspective of the view to suit your own particular fancy. In other words, no two people are going to look at the same thing, at the same one thing the same way. No way. So, shoot, let me have some questions. A little hard to see with these lights. Is there any way to turn the lights down just a tad? Is there a light guy here? Yes, I have a question right out here. Shoot. Yeah. I'll repeat whatever you say so everybody else can hear it. Say, if you get a lot of different angles on the same piece of information, do you subcategorize it? Yeah, I wouldn't say make a formal subcategory of it. You wouldn't need to do that, but just let it all roll by and know that there's really more than one way to look at it, and that you're not seeing new information. There we go. That helps a lot. How about turning these lights that are on me down just a tad? Is that possible? If it is, that's great. If it isn't, that's okay too. Okay, so now make a note of this. What this gentleman is saying is very important. What he's saying is in music, as with most things, but especially in music, there are very few things that you have to learn. Now I won't talk about drums here because I don't know, but I'll tell you about guitar. There's maybe 15, 16, 17 things about guitar playing and the whole world of music, rhythm, melody, and harmony, and all of the various combinations of things that lie within those simple categories. There are only about 16, 17 things to it, and everything else is just various combinations of that. And you'll hear those various combinations stated as if they were new information. The fact of the matter is that they're not. You'll actually be hearing the same information over and over and over again, but just stated with a slightly different angle, a slightly different view. So it's important to sort of look into it and say, wait a minute, what's this guy really saying? Is this something that really is new to me, or is it just a different way to say something I already know, or to say something that another guy said a different way? Okay, do you want to write that down in any way you can on your paper? Be able to separate new information from just another way of saying the same old stuff? In other words, separate new from old. Separate what you already know from what is really new. Sounds like a small thing, but it's a big deal. I'd like to recommend a book for you on the subject. You might be able to buy it here at the student store. If you can't, you can probably get it across the street at that bookstore over there. It's called The Psychology of Music, and it's written by Seashore, S-E-A-S-H-O-R-E. Psychology of Music. And it's book was written, I think, in 1928 or something like that. It's a result of some studies that were done. Nobody had ever done any studies in the psychology of music. How do people react to it? How do they learn it? What does it mean? Blah, 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 blah. So some serious work was done on it in the 20s. They found out a lot of things that were not known, and if you go to public school systems in the United States especially today, you'd swear up and down that none of that work had ever been done. The chances are that if you've gone to a public school system of any sort in the United States, you've probably been trained to some extent to go about learning the wrong way, more than likely. More than likely. Hungarians are light years ahead of us in that department. I'll tell you more about that later on, maybe in another meeting later on. So you got to find out what's new and from what it is you already know. Oh yeah, in the Seashore book, I think it's chapter 11 or chapter 12, especially read that, called more efficient ways in learning. All right. Now let's see some hands. Angles on this thing. Yeah, I got some hands back here. One of you just shoot it. I'm sorry, say that one more time. From tablature to guitar. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, yes, he's saying, is there any way, you use the word tablature. Yeah. Well, there are for guitar folks, there are, tablature is an old method of, a very simple form of writing down music so a guitar player can handle it. It's where the lines on the music staff aren't really lines on a music staff. They're actually represents the string of the guitar. And he's saying, is there a quick way to draw a relationship between the notes on the written page and where they are and what it all means on the guitar? And indeed there are some very neat, rapid ways to do that. And you're going to get trained in that really good here at the school. We've got some really first-rate programs and first-rate people in that. And so you'll get the hang of that real quick. It takes a while. Reading on the guitar is quite an accomplishment, only in that there's more than one place to play the same note. You know, there's only one middle C on the piano, and that's true of most other instruments. On the guitar, you might end up with 2 or 3 or 4 of the same note. Sure. All right. Well, you'll get the answers to all of that in your studies here, and there are ways to do it. For the guitar players here, the tablature thing is it's a really kind of an okay way for a straight beginner, a guy who doesn't know anything about anything at all, to maybe work out pieces of a solo out of a guitar magazine or something like that. But you can't even begin to notate music adequately with tablature, and not only that, you can't communicate it to other musicians. So that's why tablature isn't used in music literature. It's just not a complex enough form of notation. Okay, yeah, the answer to that one was a yeah. Hands? Yeah, there we got one. He's saying you're looking at one specific measure of music. Is there some way that you can integrate that into the whole piece of music so it's easier to remember as a piece of music rather than just as an isolated bar? Absolutely. Seashore talked about that a lot. Let me show you how that goes. Here you're going to want to make some notes, some little drawings on your paper. You look at the music and you scan it. And what you're doing is you're isolating the parts of it that you know from the parts that you don't know. You say, oh, that's familiar. I know that one. And, ooh, there's a very strange one right there. So the first thing you do is that first thing we wrote down. You isolate what parts do I know and what parts do I not know. Now you focus in on the first one of the parts that you don't know. That's where you start. Now, you say you've managed to isolate a bar of music, okay? You say, okay, that bar right there, everything in there looks strange to me. I'm going to have to figure that baby out. And so what you do is you take the first note of that bar. Maybe it's got, let's say it's got 8 notes in it. You take the first bar, you take the first note. You say, what is that note? Where does it go here? And how does it connect to the note that came just in front of it? It's that connection that needs to be made. So you take the note that happened right in front of it, you play that, and then you play the new one. You make the connection. And you do it. I hope you're writing, because this is it. This is it. Your hand should be flying. You're going to sort out what I'm saying in your own language. So you've found what's new. You're taking the beginning of that, and you're hooking it up to what's just came in front of it. Presumably something that's old, that you know already. So that's that hook that's important. Okay? Now you know how to get in to the new stuff. Then you take the next note, not the next 4 notes. Very important. See, 4 notes you might not be able to do. You might make a mistake. If you make a mistake, like 1 time, you increase your chances of making a mistake by about 50% the second time. If you make a mistake again the second time, your chances go up another 50% or more for making it the 3rd time. And by then, you've already started a cycle of training your nervous system to play it wrong. And that's what you absolutely must stop in its tracks. No mistakes. No mistake ever more than once. You might make a mistake once, and if you do, step back and say, whoop, stop everything. I'm going to have to be extra careful now so I don't make that mistake one more time. Otherwise, I'm going to start programming. And I've seen guys in studios. I'm talking about people who can, outrageous readers and highly trained people, get into make a mistake, tighten up a little bit and go blast through it too quick before they psyched it out, and make that mistake twice, and then it gets away from them and starts to snowball until pretty soon they can't play the thing at all. And I think it's probably happened to everybody. It's that stark terror where you absolutely freeze, and that's where, and that freeze comes from letting a mistake get away from you. Yes. No, that's wrong. What he just said was he heard that you have to be careful about when you're practicing your reading because you might actually learn the line and know how it goes and kind of be playing it by ear, and therefore you're not doing what you should be doing, which is practice your reading. No, that's absolutely not right at all. That's totally wrong. Nobody cares if you practice your reading. Nobody in this world gives a darn, one way or the other, whether you ever practiced your reading. The only thing they care about is, can you read? That's the only thing that matters. Practicing your reading is of absolutely no value to anybody on this planet. Being able to read is. Now, being able to read, and here, let me show you how it goes. Here's the way it's really done. I hope you write this down. You pick up the music, you say, oh, there it is, and there's no instrument. The instrument's in your head. And it goes, cha-da, cha, cha-da, cha, cha-da, cha-da, cha, 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 cha-da. You look away, and you deliberately attempt not to develop not reading it. You want to develop the memory of it. You want da 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 da. You want it there at that level, at the musical, hear it, feel it level. That's where you want it. You don't want it da 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 da. I'm practicing da 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 da. You don't want that. You want it to become the music, get it converted into music, which you then play as music. You follow me? Now that is actually reading, and that's practicing reading at its best. Then you sit down to read this thing. You're not really sight reading. Like the guitar player said, oh, there's a bunch of E's all over the guitar. Well, that means you got to actually figure out which one is it that you're going to play. It could be this one, it could be that one, it could be this. So you don't sit down with a guitar and put some music up there and have just your finger automatically go to the right note. It would automatically go to about 4 of them, right? You got to figure that sucker out. So this business of automatic sight reading thing, forget it. It ain't happening. You have to figure it out every single time. The only difference between a guy who can do it, who can sight read, and a guy who can't, is the guy who's sight reading has gotten it down so fast, the learning process, so quick, that he can figure out the lines going on there and figure out the fingerings and everything else while he's plugging in his equipment. Then when it comes time to play it, the stick comes down, bam, he already knows it. It goes da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And he plays that way. That way he's a heads-up player. He's looking at the conductor. He's not going like this, right? Now the music is coming out. He doesn't, you follow me? Because he knows the song. He knows the music. Yeah. I'm sorry, speak a little louder. So, here, see, I've got a hum coming out of these speakers in my ear, and it sounds like an airplane. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Some chords happening every now and then with a bunch of single notes mostly. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you have to learn it, yeah. You're talking about how do you go about learning reading notes in a stack? Sure. Well, you start with the top note. And you learn the top note first, then the second one, and you go this way. Okay. Oh, yes, you have to know. Absolutely, you have to learn it. He's saying you have to learn all this stuff. That's true. And you have to learn it on the spot, yeah. Not off it, but it's okay. I really can't hear you well enough to, it doesn't matter who the name is. Yeah. Yeah, okay, he's talking about learning a whole bunch of chords that are all written out in notes. Uh-huh. Uh-huh, yes, uh-huh. Chord by chord, measure by measure, right. If you learn the chord as a whole, huh? Oh, you can tell if it's a chord or not because it's got a whole bunch of notes at the same time, yeah. Yeah, that's, forget inversions, forget any of that stuff. I mean, those are categories that are all going to help you all learn. No, essentially what you're looking at is, here's a piece of music. It goes, chong, da 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 dee da, chong, cha-ching, chong, chong, dee 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 dee, bong. That's the music, right? Now, who cares? Inversion, ninth degree of the so-and-so. That's the tune, play the tune. I mean, to me, you really learn that in doing Tom and Jerry cartoons. You listen to those things. You listen to the music. And I've done a bunch of them, boy. And I want to tell you, there's no rehearsal. You walk in there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you walk in there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and there's no talk like, there's nothing like, well, this is kind of jazzy, guys, or, golly, we're going to do a little rock this morning. No, it's none of that. Let's rehearse bar 4, none of that. It's like, picture, rolling, and nobody has played a note yet, and here comes this guy who wrote it, and here comes the hands, and the orchestra's going, boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, boom, boom, and it's not making any sense at all, right? I mean, it's not making any sense, and you're just sitting there. And you're just sitting there wishing that there'd be some kind of a groove that you could get on and coast just a little bit with, but there isn't any. It's just this frantic nonsense all the time, and all you can do is count and read the dang thing. The hardest music in the world to read. But yes, you get that good. You actually get to the point where you can do that. And you, as I say, in the school here, during the year, you're going to get some really outstanding training in being able to do that. Yes, I don't think my presence here today would be best served by me talking about specific techniques in learning to read, for example. I think these techniques I'm talking about are a little broader than that. Yeah, we have a question. We're getting questions rolling. See it work? Yeah. Which is the best way between when practicing mental visualization or actually practicing? Right? Is that the question? Okay, write these down. I hope you're getting them down somehow, because all this stuff contains what we're in little ways, all of it. The mental visualization part is absolutely essential to the whole process, and so is the playing part of it. They probably should be separated as two different things. Here's one thing. Don't confuse visualization with just a visual eye activity. You should also be able to visualize the sound of it. You should visualize the sound as well. You should be able to say, do 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 do. And it's just a sound, it's just a feel. And you say, okay, now, I ain't got no guitar. I got no pencil, I got no paper. But I want to know that sound of that music so that I can take it into a studio 1 hour from now, or I have to a rehearsal or whatever, and write it down real quick and say, here guys, there it is, and here's how it goes. But I want to do it all in my head first. And that's the way trained musicians operate. We'll say, well, how did you just play it like that, you know? Because I practiced it in my head. I didn't need a guitar to practice it. I knew I could picture where my hand should be. And how do you get to where you can do that? Through practicing that, as opposed to practicing this. Say, do dee do dee dee do dee do. Where does that go? So you start this way, ba da da da, and you're walking down the street. You're on your way home from school. You're going da 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 dee. Is that a G? Da da a D? And you're slow. But that's the way it's happening. That's the way it's happening. And after just a few days of that, of visualizing both the sound and the look, where does it go on the instrument, right? Is that a left-right stroke, or is it a right-left, or is it a flam, or a whatever? Working it all out. Where does it go on the paper? What does that look like? Can I imagine it? Right? Sure you can. You can get it all in your head. You can imagine every bit of it in the sound as well and work it all out. And then when you get home, you'll get so good that pretty soon you'll just be able to walk over and take out a piece of paper, still no instrument, write it out, and it looks really neat, and all the lines connect, and anybody can read it, and it's really clear. Fingerings or stroke numbers are written down. Then you pick up your axe and you glance at it and you say, oh yeah, that's what it is, and you just go, and that's it, then you've done it. Now that's the whole, now you got the whole cookie in the oven. Yeah.
How does that relate to, visualizing it in your head and no mistakes process?
Yes. Well, if the way that visualizing in your head relates to no mistakes is if you can't visualize it in your head, what that translates to right away is that you don't know where your fingers are supposed to go. And if you don't know that, you're going to make mistakes. I'll bet money on it. I'll bet my car on that one. You show me a guy that makes a mistake, and I'll show you a guy that doesn't know how it's supposed to sound. or he doesn't know where his hands are supposed to be. Simple as that. That's the origin of the mistake. The guy doesn't know. Yeah. 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 How do you find the right place on the fingerboard to play a given passage? Well, there are a lot of factors to it. But essentially, you look at the bottom note and you look at the top note, and that tells you what the range is. And if the top note is above the staff, then you know you're not going to be down there. If the notes are below the staff, you know you're not going to be up here. So in that range, roughly of 3 octaves, you're going to say, well, I'm either in the high range or in the mid range or in the bottom end, somewhere. You're going to lock it in pretty well. You're going to, just that simple as that. Then you might refine it by, well, I want a longer string on this note than a short string. Yes. Uh-huh. He's saying, why is it so much easier to read single notes lines like this, but then when you run into chords and they go like this, more difficult? Because you're talking to your guitar player, right? Well, that's because of the pattern recognition. You've got a complex pattern that you've got to do with a chord. You got a thing that's saying, oh, that's a brown dog with a short tail, and you might not see another one of those the rest of your life. You know. So naturally, you got a memory problem with it. You say, oh, what is that? And yeah, right. Sure. Yes. Yes. He's saying about learning the new, separating the new from the old. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Sure, there's a way to remedy that. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to write about that. I want to come up with a new series of articles in Guitar Player magazine about that. Making music at the speed of thought, which involves taking away things that are not essential to the making of the music itself. If the thing goes da 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 da, you say, oh, that's the thing itself, isn't it? Okay, yes. Then why do I have to call it G7? Are you catching my point? If that is the thing, what does the word G7 have to do with that thing being what it is? Anything? Probably not. So you can remove that as one of the elements. What I'm getting at here is that the language and the words, oh, that's a major third, that's a minor third, that's a Lydian mode, oh, that's a Phrygian. That's a pentatonic scale, a minor third higher than the relative major. And all that stuff, that is language and words and symbols that are used to describe the sound of the music after the fact. And you can have a conversation over at Arby's all day long about that stuff and never get a note of music out of there. So it's important to know that where does the talking and the writing and the symbols and the analysis stop and the music start. And a lot of times the analysis and the music and the symbols and the words are extraneous to the music and can be left out. You follow what I'm saying? Or do you? Is it conceivable that you could play music without any theoretical background at all? You bet. You know that. So just keep those things clean, keep them separate. One is, and a lot of times, more often than not, you can go straight to the music itself and figure, well, I'll analyze it later and put names on things later. And thereby getting rid of one big funny thing that you have to do, another thing to remember. Yeah. Yes. Well, okay.
For me, an issue is concentration. Concentration.
Uh-huh. Okay, concentration. Concentration is affected by overload. So write this down. You can take on too much stuff. Never set out, I'll exaggerate, never set out to learn, say, 100 notes, okay? Only set out to learn a tiny few. Perhaps you have 100 that you ultimately want to do, maybe the whole tune or something. Don't set out to learn the whole tune. You can't play the whole tune at the same time, right? You know what I'm saying? Do you follow me? You say, well, here's this whole tune, and it goes. Right? So the idea of playing the whole tune is stupid. It's never going to come up. So if you're never going to perform this thing like that, why would in the world would you ever expect yourself to learn it like that? You're never going to learn a whole tune. Boom, got it. No. It's da da dee da da dee da da. It's a note at a time. That's what it really is. And that's the way you learn it. You learn it the way it sounds. You hear it a note at a time. You play it a note at a time. That's what it is. That's the way you learn it. So you're learning a note at a time. And if you're doing that, then you're not going to break your concentration because you never have an overload of information to deal with. You're always dealing with one note at a time. One note at a time. Now you might get faster and faster and faster and faster until pretty soon you're blowing people away with how fast you are at it. But you're still only doing one note at a time. And you're not going to make mistakes because you only got one note. You don't have 100. If you take on 100, you're looking at mistake city. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse. Not only that, but you're going to look at overload and you're going to find yourself getting tired. And you're going to find yourself getting discouraged and disgusted. And then you're going to find yourself sitting there probably like most other people do with a furrowed brow like this going, do, dee, dee, clunk, darn, darn, clunk, 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 and getting tighter and tighter and saying, how am I going to get this in time for class? And you're freezing up and clunk, darn, clunk. And the next thing you know, and there's the symptom of the overload, you find yourself going like this, playing a B.B. King lick that you've been playing for 10 years. You know? You know that that's the way that goes, right? Sure, and it's that way with all of us. I mean, I'm no exception to the thing. Been there myself. But that's what happens with the overload, and you can eliminate that whole thing of losing your attention span, and you can just handle all that stuff super easy by always dealing with little teeny weeny things, one at a time, very slow. Here's another rule: whenever you're learning anything new that you haven't done before, do it super, super slow. And when I say slow, so slow that you'd be embarrassed if anybody caught you doing it. Because now that's the way it's done. That is truly the way it's done. And I'm talking about the greatest musicians in the world do it that way. I got hung up on this thing. I said, I think I'm going to start polling these fiddle players and these people who perform. I mean, the violin players. If you ever sit in an orchestra, I don't know if this probably will never come in your life. I hope it does. I lived in an era where guitar was part of the orchestra, and that I entered the industry just as it was becoming accepted as an orchestral instrument, and I left that scene just as synthesizers started taking place of the orchestra. And it could be that I just lived through a 30-year era that will just become part of history. But I can at least pass it on secondhand. You have no idea what it's like to sit in the middle of, say, an 85-piece orchestra at 8 o'clock in the morning, and nobody knows how anything goes. Nobody knows how the tune goes. All they see there is double forte, pianissimo, accelerando, poco retardando, and stuff like that. And some guy goes, and you hear, and this thing is going crazy around you, and you can't believe how good people can be. There's 85 guys playing together like they were one guy. And you look back there and there's 3 old guys. You say, was that basses I heard with doing that? You look back there, and here's old guys with white hair, with stand-up basses with strings that high, going like that, right along with the cellos and the piccolos. And so, blown away by these people, I started saying, how do you practice? And you know what? Every one of them, every single one, said, in my head. Every single one. I practice in my head. In other words, if you don't have it in your head, it ain't going to happen on the guitar or the drums or the bass. It ain't going to, forget it. That's a pipe dream. If you don't know where the fingers are supposed to go, and if you don't understand the sticking, if you don't understand the picking, and if you don't know where those notes are supposed to be on the staff, or where they're supposed to be played here, or worst, most of all, you don't know how they're supposed to sound. If you don't have that stuff in your head, you ain't got a chance of making it happen on your axe. If you have it straightened out in your head first, then comes the business of building up your motor skills on your instrument. Now that's a whole different matter. I hope you're writing this down, that those two things are separate. Those two things are separate. You've probably seen it yourself. I have seen it many times. People who have managed to develop motor skills on an instrument. I did that when I was a kid. I didn't know how to make any music, so I just got hung up on the guitar, and I just got to where I could play like the wind. I could go brrr. Really, easiest thing in the world. And, but it was absolutely, had no connection with music whatsoever. I mean, it could have been anything, but it was not music. So you can do that. You can build up motor skills, and you can just be just one heck of a technician on your instrument, and just play gibberish. It would be total nonsense. Like monkeys' typewriters or something. So, well, I'm not saying that to be cute or facetious, because it's true. I'm saying you can, without any consideration without any musical considerations at all, develop some really outrageous instrumental skills, and end up with nothing. On the other hand, you can do the same thing inversely. You can have acquired a great deal of eye, ear, mind, music coming from the soul. La dee da da, la dee dee ba da ba da dee dee, right? And all that stuff, or doo dee 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 dee, all of that, and have it down, but have no instrumental skills at all, and thereby no voice for this knowledge, this musical knowledge that you have there. So the two, you need them both going. You got to be a double-barreled person, I think. So developing the motor skills is just about like developing any other athletic skill, like shooting pool or shooting baskets or anything else. It's a matter of precision, repetition, no mistakes. Oh, and even visualizing, that's a good one. You listen to the athletes talk about, listen to Olympic athletes talk. What do you do? How do you get ready for that downhill slalom? Oh, I visualized it the night before. How many times have you heard that? Check it out. That's standard routine in athletics. Routine stuff. And playing a musical instrument is an athletic skill. And so you can even use your imagination, rehearsal in your imagination for building up these. But I think Tommy Tedesco once mentioned that he felt the thing that got him is, don't hold me to this, I think it was him, might have been someone else, but that the thing that got his chops together for speed here was sitting and watching TV, like Johnny Carson or something, and just noodling like this mindlessly, with the sound on. You know. That's a great way to go to build up these kind of chops. The other chops, the mental visualization and the hearing, the visualization of hearing, all can be done just beautifully without any guitar at all. More beautifully without than with. Yeah, we had another hand I saw shoot up. Yeah, right here. The brown dog with short tail, right. Uh-huh. Oh, okay, so he's saying a brown dog with a short tail. Does this mean that you should have seen all of the combinations first so that when you see it, you'll recognize it? The chances of seeing all the combinations are out of the question. The elements of the music itself are very simple, like you know, half dozen things going on there. But when you take all the possible combinations that they could be put into, there's no way you're going to see them all. But if you're talking about, but what you will see is patterns. You'll start, this is called pattern recognition. They use it in certain kinds of computer programming strategies. But in a case of a guitar or something, you'll start to see shapes and patterns. You'll see little things like little V's, and you'll recognize that V, say like the short tail. You know what I'm saying? And then you'll see another thing that's like maybe a little square box or something. That might be the brown dog. And then there'll be other little shapes, and you'll start to recognize, oh, that's one of the V's hooked on to a star or hooked on to something else, and you'll start to see things that way. Probably not, it'll never happen that you've seen everything. That won't happen. But you'll start to see things and say, oh yeah, this isn't all a brand new chord because I really remember that from another chord, and I remember this is familiar from another chord. So that repertoire will start to grow. Yeah. So after a while, and very quickly, you'll find out that what is really brand new and that you've never seen before is starting to get less and less, and very, very quickly. Yeah. After a while, you will have seen not every combination of things, but just about every building block that you're likely to run across. Yeah. I'm sorry, say one more time. Uh-huh. You make a mistake in playing, okay? Uh-huh. Yeah, is there anything else you should do? You make a mistake, and do you just go right back and do it again? No, no, no. He says, is there anything mentally you should do to reprogram? Absolutely. Go back and say, what about them? What mistake did I make? Well, did I make a mistake of the whole bar? Was the whole bar a mistake? Usually not. It was the fifth note in that bar that was the mistake. That's the way it actually goes. And you say, okay, that means that I probably didn't know where my hand was supposed to be to play that note. I probably didn't know really what is it? How is it supposed to sound? What's it supposed to look like? How does it feel? How does it feel to get from the note in front of it to that note and from it to the next one? So you isolate it down to what really the problem is, and it'll seldom end up being a bar. It'll generally always end up being a note, and getting into it and getting out of it. So you then isolate it and say, okay, let's find out what it is first before we play it again, and nail it down, and then play it real slow, real right, and that's the way you do that. But just rushing back to the beginning and rushing through again without getting to the bottom of what's really behind the mistake, that's what you don't want to do. Yeah.